do you think his father is, huh? You're fired." Mr. Whitmore snapped at me after I had simply pointed out that a new employee who did absolutely no work was misbehaving. Turns out, this new guy was his son. He was exploiting his dad's position to do whatever he pleased, and instead of reprimanding him, my boss blamed me, the mentor. I was at my breaking point. I decided I'd fight back. My name is Ruth Bell, a 55-year-old employee with a husband named Philip, who's 2 years my senior. Our marriage is solid. Neighbors even call us a perfect match. We have a 28-year-old daughter, Melody, who's been thriving as a professional since graduating from college. Up until a month ago, in September, my life was pretty smooth, but then I encountered an unbelievable person. September is when we welcome new hires, making it a busy season for mentors like me. I always look forward to meeting the newcomers, so I was excited about this year's batch. The first day they show up for work, our company conducts a week-long orientation, which includes classroom-style learning. An employee tasked with the presentation stood in front of the new hires, explaining the company's operations and other details using slides, following the same format for orientation that we do every year. And once again, I was part of the team overseeing the orientation from the back of the room, hoping to gauge their attention and use it to tailor future training. But barely 5 minutes in, I noticed a new hire fast asleep, snoring with his head on the desk. I had never encountered such disrespectful behavior. To make matters worse, his appearance seemed more playboy than professional, complete with dreadlocks, gold bracelets, and intimidating skull rings. I approached him to wake him up when suddenly Douglas Whitmore, the department head, rushed over. "Hey, let the kid sleep. He pulled an all-nighter and is exhausted," he said in a low voice, but his intensity made it clear he expected to be obeyed. Curious, I pulled him aside to ask, "Mr. Whitmore, who is this new employee and how do you know he stayed up all night?" He irritably explained, "That's my son, Frank. We live together, so I know he's been cutting sleep to work hard on becoming a professional gamer." This raised more questions for me. "So, because he's your son, you're saying we should overlook him sleeping during training? And if he wants to be a pro gamer, why join our company?" "Becoming a pro gamer isn't easy, you know. He's working here to earn money and learn societal norms until he can make it big in gaming. You're not looking down on pro gamers, are you?" He confronted me aggressively. Jumping to conclusions and getting mad was a bad habit of his. "No, that's not it. Whatever someone aspires to be is their choice, and dreaming of being a pro gamer is valid. But sleeping through training isn't acceptable, especially if he wants to learn societal norms. Let's wake him up," I firmly suggested. As I attempted to return to the training room, Mr. Whitmore grabbed my arm, warning, "That's my son you're talking about. I won't allow rough treatment." "I'm just gonna wake him, nothing rough. Giving him special treatment just because he's your son will only build resentment among the other employees. We need to maintain order by addressing wrong behavior." It's likely Frank turned out this way due to his upbringing. Resisting the urge to sigh, I shook off his grip and headed back to wake Frank, who, upon being nudged, snapped, "Leave me alone, old lady," before dozing off again. His behavior was incredibly immature, and even the female employee sitting next to him looked appalled. Despite my efforts, Frank continued to ignore me, leading me to eventually give up. Throughout the orientation, he remained asleep, awake for no more than 15 minutes in total. Although other employees attempted to address his behavior, Mr. Whitmore would always intervene, making it pointless. Mr. Whitmore, who had transferred from another company last year, was skilled at his job but intimidating, making him widely disliked. Frank's hiring, clearly a result of nepotism, only worsened his reputation, as everyone silently questioned why Frank was even hired. Later, I learned that Mr. Whitmore had pushed for his son's hiring based on false accomplishments, believing he would excel at the company. Like father, like son, I guess. Frank's attitude during training showed he was far from beneficial. Even though I was assigned as his mentor, he ignored all my instructions, dismissing work assignments with a flippant, "Let someone else effing do it. I'm gonna be a successful sick pro gamer, yo. Give me tasks worthy of me," while messing around with this gaming device. You need to use polite language in any field, and no gaming during work hours. I felt like I was dealing with a child. I couldn't help but wonder why I had to give such basic instructions to a man in his 20s. A month has passed since his hiring, and Frank's work ethic has not improved, despite my patient guidance. At the new employee welcome party, he let slip that his educational background was fabricated. "Yeah, I did enroll in college, but quit in my sophomore year because it was boring. I never did any of that event committee stuff. My dad just made it all up. He's always had my back, even divorcing my nagging mom and taking care of me after I left school. Guess that's what you call a real dad, huh?" He was blabbering away, drunk, while everyone around him gave him cold looks. Yet his father, the department head, just laughed it off with a, "Hey, you shouldn't say things like that in public." It was the perfect example of a no good father-son duo. Many coworkers sympathized with me, suggesting, "You don't have to deal with him. Just report everything to the president and get him fired." I agreed and decided to talk directly to the president. But before I could, I was summoned by Mr. Whitmore, who ominously said, "We need to talk about my son." He led me to a deserted conference room where Frank was sitting back arrogantly, looking like a foolish king. Mr. Whitmore positioned me in front of Frank and demanded the unbelievable, "Apologize to my son. Your excessive guidance has hurt him. Say you're sorry." I was absolutely against it. I had only spoken the truth, and there were plenty of witnesses among the other employees. Anyone with a functioning brain would say Frank was in the wrong. "Mr. Whitmore, enough with the coddling. He's the one who should be apologizing. His language towards his senior is appalling, and he's gaming during work hours instead of working. Do you realize how uncomfortable and inconvenienced the other employees feel because of him? And Frank, now is the time to apologize to everyone. You are the one who's wrong here." As I tried to lead Frank out of the room, Mr. Whitmore turned red with anger. "Who do you think his father is, huh? You're fired. I'll talk to the higher-ups and have you dismissed. I've achieved more than anyone since joining this company. My word will certainly be heeded." What an outrageous person. I had reached my limit. I couldn't stand it any longer. I was determined to fight back. "Do as you please. Just don't regret it later," I said, and attempted to leave. Frank and his father probably thought I was just bluffing, smirking as I opened the door to leave. Then, standing there was a woman. Seeing her, Mr. Whitmore suddenly straightened up and started talking politely. "Good afternoon, Melody. What can I do for you?" His groveling had a reason. She was the president's daughter. She looked at him coldly. "Do you have a problem with my mother? I happened to hear voices as I passed by. Did she get in trouble with Frank?" "What do you mean, my mother?" He was visibly shocked. Frank also looked confused. I took it upon myself to explain. "Oh, didn't you know? She's my daughter. And that makes me the wife of the company's president." I thought most employees knew, and I did mention it at the welcome party when you joined, but I guess you were too drunk to remember. My daughter added, "My parents, including my father, the president, share the same last name. It's surprising you didn't notice. Maybe it's because you're disliked around here. Nobody bothered to tell you." The truth made him tremble. I had no idea you were the president's wife." But why would the president's wife be here and not in an executive position? I'm not really cut out for management. I prefer being with the workers, so I asked to stay out of an executive role. I explained, and he gave an awkward smile. I see, but that's not the issue right now. I've upset the president's wife. What should I do? Unlike his flustered father, Frank, still defiant, said, Yo, Melody, you work here too, right? Being the president's daughter means you got in through connections, just like me. Don't act all high and mighty, biatch. I was annoyed, but my daughter was even more irritated. Don't compare me to you, Frank. I graduated from college without any delays and passed the employment exam. I didn't sleep through the new employee training and started as a regular employee without any special treatment. My parents never spoiled me just because I'm the president's daughter. He finally fell silent after her stern rebuke. Mr. Whitmore scolded his son. Why are you opposing the president's daughter? You could get fired for this. Frank began to panic at the mention of being fired. Whoa, shit, is it really that serious? What should I do, Dad? I sighed deeply. Shouldn't you start by apologizing? You've been acting as you please. It's time to apologize for that. Hearing this, Mr. Whitmore made his son stand and they both started apologizing together. We're very sorry. This won't happen again. Please forgive us. Frank added. My bad, yo. I mean, I'm sorry. I won't play games during work hours and will listen to you. But I wasn't ready to forgive them. You've also troubled the other employees. You'll need to apologize to everyone. I made them apologize in front of everyone. Their faces seemed to expect forgiveness, as if their misdeeds could be easily excused with an apology, but they were not getting away so easily. Your misconduct will be reported to the president, my husband. Be prepared for the consequences. My daughter nodded in agreement. However, both Frank and his dad began to plead. Please, don't do anything too harsh. They were too stubborn for their own good. Just as I was getting fed up, a voice said, No need to report this. My husband had appeared by my side. Mr. Whitmore immediately clung to him, pleading, Please, anything but firing me. I'll change my attitude, I promise. Frank also begged, albeit less eloquently. Please, I can't lose my job at this age. Being unemployed would be terrible, yo. My husband, usually a gentle soul, shouted at them in annoyance. I've already heard about your misdeeds from the other employees. The son does nothing but play games, and the father harasses his subordinates. We don't need employees like you. You're both fired. It was rare to see him so angry. He must have been truly fed up with their behavior. Mr. Whitmore, looking pale, tried to defend himself. Respectfully, I've brought significant achievements to this company since joining. My departure would be a loss. But my husband dismissed his plea. Your work performance may be impressive, but that's it. We have no use for someone who harasses others. The company functioned before you came, and will continue to do so without you. Mr. Whitmore was flustered, but my husband didn't care, continuing, Your way of harassing is cowardly, taking people to secluded spots to berate them without witnesses. However, some brave employees have come forward to me. Their accounts were detailed and came from those without a history of problems. There's no escaping the truth. Hearing this, he slumped, defeated. Frank, now without his father's support, was stunned. And thus the troublesome duo was fired. Frank, having done little work, had nothing to hand over and was told not to return. He awkwardly collected his gaming console and quietly left the office. Mr. Whitmore had some handover tasks, making his remaining days at the office uncomfortable. He received minimal interaction from his subordinates, who gave him cold stares whenever he tried to speak. Even he couldn't ignore their disdain. He attempted to ingratiate himself with a fake smile, saying, "Be a bit nicer, please. I won't be here much longer, and it's sad to be treated this way." But it was completely ignored. In fact, the employees he had harassed decided to sue him. He tried to appease them with expensive sweets and money, calling it pocket money, which only angered them further. "We're not kids! Do you think we're that easy to buy off?" they shouted. Disgusted, I told him, "It's too late for anything you do now. Just accept responsibility for your actions." Eventually, he quietly finished his handover work and left the company. Neither he nor Frank were missed, and there was no farewell party for them. They had fallen from their positions of power to become merely troublesome individuals, disliked and ousted from the company, a fitting end for their arrogance and lack of sense. Re-employment would be difficult for them, but that was no concern of mine. I hoped they would learn from this hardship. A month later, Mr. Whitmore settled with the employees that had sued him, paying them a satisfactory settlement. It was good to see the victims' anger resolved. 2 months on, a coworker showed me a video on a content-sharing platform featuring Frank and his father. They had tried their hand at becoming content creators, talking about their intentions and future plans, but the content was awkward and far from entertaining, with only 3 views. The next video they posted was equally devoid of any humor. It was a video where they introduced items from their house, but when Frank said, "This is ketchup. This is sugar. By the way, I'm not sweet like this sugar," I just wanted to stop watching. The other employees watching with me had the same, "What's supposed to be funny about this?" look on their faces. There were also gameplay commentary videos, but they were so dull I couldn't even bring myself to comment. Moreover, Frank was so bad at gaming that he couldn't even last a minute without getting defeated by enemies. Maybe they turned to video posting because they couldn't find jobs, but honestly, with this quality, they won't be able to make a living. Frank and his father continued posting for about a month, but eventually they must have realized their lack of talent and stopped. Then their account was quietly deleted. Half a year later, while having dinner with my family, we casually watched the news on TV and saw Mr. Whitmore and Frank. They had been caught breaking into a house with the intention of theft. They claimed they committed the crime out of financial desperation. They were also suspected of stealing cash from other houses, and the police were investigating. I had thought lowly of them, but never imagined they'd fall this low. Not just me, but my husband and daughter were also shocked. At the same time, we all agreed it was good that we fired them. On my end, I've been dedicating myself to work. I'm busy with a series of major projects, but since they're all fulfilling, I'm pushing through. The new employees have learned their duties well and are now valuable members of the team. With the troublemakers gone, the workplace atmosphere has changed for the better, and employees seem happier and more productive. My relationship with my husband and daughter remains strong. We've even talked about going on a trip together once work settles down. Despite the ordeal with the terrible duo, I'm glad it was resolved. I hope for many more peaceful days ahead.